Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, Vasili, Gianarakos. Vasili, welcome back for another episode, buddy. How you doing?
Doing good, Yariv. Lots to talk about in terms of the Flyers and just hockey in general. So, gonna be a fun episode. How are you doing, buddy, over there in Israel?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm also holding the mic. So if you guys are listening to the audio and you hear noise and stuff, that's just me moving around because it's annoying and it's a pretty heavy mic. But yeah, I'm in Israel right now, so I'm kind of roughing it a little bit with the setup. It's been good, man. It's been late night watching the games, or the next day I got to rewatch what I fell asleep during. But I'm excited to talk about hockey. Regardless of current situations, I'm excited to talk about hockey. And as we get started here, let's just say this, okay? Because there is no right answer, as you can learn from navigating the internet. Every single person of any race, religion, sexual proclivity, whatever it is, you are welcome here. I'm going to make that very clear. The majority of the time, I would say 99% of the time, we're not going to be talking about it. 99.9, outside of maybe addressing it just so it's not the elephant in the room, which is what we're going to try to do here. But I don't care about talking about political issues. I'm not saying that I don't have my political opinions about it or an emotional reaction to it or anybody else does. I'm not interested in talking about it on here. Quite frankly, I even recommend that nobody talk about it. If you want to talk about hockey, I see it as a distraction from hockey. You cannot like that, but that's what this podcast is about, is to talk about hockey. So, if you want to hear a little bit of my opinion, it's really just, I kind of agree with what Chris Therien said, and I don't agree with really anybody else fully on anything. So, open-ended. Don't need to add much more than that, but anybody who listens to this can feel about it however they want. You're always welcome here to talk about hockey. And that's the one thing that I'll say, is that there's no disconnect or strong opinion enough to push you guys away from the love of this team. And that is the focus of this. If you guys want to talk about it on our boards or read the articles, we have some stuff that addresses this. Feel free, talk to the writers who are writing about that. But this podcast is not going to spend too much time. Vasily, you want to say something extra on the
Yeah, yeah,
Provorov matter?
yeah. Just a couple things, really, and just to start off, first of all, us as a podcast, we love everyone. We welcome everyone to listen to us. So, we are open to anybody who wants to come here and have it be a safe space to listen and talk about hockey, and we respect and everybody's opinions on the matter and things like that. And you know what, to be honest, like me and Yariv, when we started doing this podcast together, essentially the reason being is that we wanted to focus on hockey because we felt that a lot of other podcasts don't talk about hockey enough, and they are hockey podcasts, which is hilarious enough, right? And typically, the way we try to do things is in an unbiased manner. So basically, I'm just going to lay out quickly kind of what happened, just in case, some people might not be aware. I'm sure you all are, but nonetheless, we'll do that because that's, our duty, right, to be unbiased and provide facts for you all. So essentially, this is what occurred. The Flyers had a Pride night where they had players who wanted to wear, rainbow colored jerseys with the Pride flags, for a pregame warm-up, and they were going to fundraise and sell those jerseys off afterwards. Provorov, due to his Russian Orthodox religion, decided not to wear the jersey and participate in the pregame warm-up, which is totally his right and his opinion. And as we're saying, on both sides, everybody has the right to their own opinion and their own beliefs in these matters. We respect and we respect that. And then from that situation, Tortorella essentially supported his player, supported the team and the Knight as well. So one thing to note is that, the Knight did a great thing, for the LGBTQ community. It was a great night for inclusivity and raising money and all that. So that's one thing that I think that is getting lost in all of this, right? Not focusing on the Knight and the positive of what happened as well. And essentially, I'm just going to read out here some statements that were given out by the Flyers as well. So the Flyers stated the Philadelphia Flyers organization is committed to inclusivity and is proud to support the LGBTQ community. Many of our players are active in their support of the LGBTQ organizations, and we were proud to host our annual Pride Night again this year. The Flyers will continue to be strong advocates for inclusivity and the LGBTQ community. And the NHL statement was similar. Hockey is for everyone and is the umbrella initiative under which the league encourages clubs to celebrate the diversity that exists in their respective markets and to work to achieve more welcoming and inclusive environments for all fans. The NHL said in the statement, clubs decide whom to celebrate, when and how, with league council and support, and players are free to decide which initiatives to support. And we continue to encourage their voices and perspectives on social and cultural issues. So essentially, that's all I really wanted to say on the matter. Just give the facts for you guys there. And just to remember, in these situations, there's always two sides to the coin. And I believe, that everybody should be respected, and both sides and both parties should be respected. And it should be, addressed and kind of gone through in a fair manner, which I don't think a lot of people really did in the situation, right? It was a lot of reporting that, you're reporting the facts, but you're giving an opinion. Personally, I think it should be an unbiased situation where, you report and then move on from that point. So that's what we wanted to do here. And I think we did a good job of that. And from there, we'll get to the hockey.
Yeah, no, good job breaking that down. Just, fill in some details for those. As you can see, we're not very interested in commenting either way. But again, no matter what you feel about the situation, just know you can come here, talk about hockey, think about hockey. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's move forward. Let's move forward with the situation. I think we can touch base on how this affects the Flyers a little bit later. But let's talk about where the Flyers are right now. So as we record this game, the Flyers just beat the Detroit Red Wings 2-1 in a very defensive, I guess, treacherous game, but really the type of game. Yeah, low event, but if you're the away team, that's a pretty good game.
That's what you want, yeah.
Yeah, as a home team, probably not, and obviously the results showed. The Flyers just don't go away. They lose a tough one to Chicago. They beat Detroit. Now they have another game, a tough game against Winnipeg tonight as we record this. Vasili, how you feeling about the? I'll let you go first. How you feeling about the Detroit win? How do you feel about that game overall?
It was an interesting game, and I was keeping an eye on this one particularly because, not to say Detroit isn't a good team or anything like that, but they're around the same level, I would say, that the Flyers are kind of at. So based on the loss to Chicago, who's effectively at the bottom of the standings, and is probably a team that the Flyers, usually beat, most likely. I was just trying to kind of see what the team's resilience would be like, how they're going to bounce back. And that would kind of be conducive to how the team maybe is going to move forward in the next stretch of games. So, I think the Flyers did just that, right? They showed their resilience once again. They bounced back with a hard fought. Yeah, right? Exactly. They've been doing it all season, right? And I think even Kevin Hayes mentioned that's kind of something that the team's been kind of rallying around, where they might lose one game, but they're not that team right now that's going to be losing two in a row, and they're always going to bounce back after like a performance that they might not be so happy with, and they kind of do the same, right? So they bounce back with a hard fought, strong team win. And what can you say? Carter Hart show once again, right? So 30 saves on 31 shots. It's unfortunate that he does not get the shutout there. Gets broken by Lucas Raymond pretty late in the game, but nonetheless, he has a .968 save percentage, and he makes some huge saves, early in the game to keep the Flyers in it. And he makes some saves in certain points that, ensures that the Red Wings don't kind of capitalize on a lot of the chances they're creating and just the offensive zone time that they had. So a lot of it is just Hart, being Hart and doing what he's kind of done all season, giving the Flyers a chance to win, and then the team bearing down and then finding some production to support him. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a big reason for a lot of his bigger games of late, earlier in the season, this was not the case. He had to stand on his head pretty much every time, but he played very well in this game against the Red Wings, and it was pretty much close to a shutout outside of pretty much, there's no way he's stopping that rebound after all those chances. But he plays a lights out game, but if you really look at that game, the Flyers really limited the second opportunities. A lot of the shots were from the outside. Everything was a lot of Detroit, well, while they had possession at times, they were trapped most of the time. They
It
didn't have a
wasn't in
lot
the
of options.
slot, yeah.
Yeah, there was almost nothing in the slot. And I was actually watching the Red Wings feed of it, which they were really great, to be honest with you. Old school guys, they were awesome. And they were like pretty much saying what I was saying. Like it was a really tough game for the Red Wings, and it's consistent with what we've been seeing. Now the Flyers are lacking some high end talent. Again, we have 3 huge injuries to this team, one of which is probably completely career threatening. I don't see how it's not at this point. The other 2 are question marks, but when the Flyers do play a team of equal talent, you're like, yeah, they could grind out a 7-game series against this team. You watch the way they play; they are playing like a playoff team. I brought it up before. Yes,
Yeah.
when you play the Bruins, who are already playing like a playoff team, or even the Maple Leafs,
Yeah. And
they
only
are
have one
playing.
regulation loss,
I mean,
factor that.
they're playing the way the Flyers are playing with more talent and to more precision. Like
Exactly.
that, it's just the reality of what it is. You can take a talented team that's kind of a mess, and the Flyers can beat them. A team like Winnipeg right now, on paper they have a little bit more high end talent, but if they don't show up tonight, Flyers could take advantage of them. But if
They could be in
Winnipeg
trouble,
continues
yeah.
to do what they're doing, that will put Flyers in a hole. So the Flyers are still talent wise where they are, but they're getting the most out of that talent. They're growing it. And a lot of these guys, they're going to get better as the season goes on. We have some younger guys to talk about at the end here. All of this is like evolving slowly in the background. And you see, kind of with this 2-1 win against the Red Wings, a team that we were very envious of last year. While I'm still envious of certain pieces, when you watch the Flyers play today, their play drives promise. And we'll get into specific players, but it's not just the young guys. You're
No.
seeing a coach get more out of veterans, which is something I've been talking about for a very long time, where I said, this is not a talent issue. I said that 3 years ago, and I still don't believe that the reason that team was bad was because of a talent issue. Is again, everything collapsed. You have a coach who sends the right message, builds the right discipline. I mean, it's working. It's undeniably working, right?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I mean, Tortorella has an effect, and the first thing obviously is just the defensive structure that we kind of allude to, right? I mean, the reason why they're able to keep Detroit off the board, with only 1 goal is just because of that structure and the fact that with that, the team is able to, keep the team or keep Detroit to the perimeter, not allow so many chances against. And I mean, if you look at the scoring chances, it's pretty even for both teams, and there's not really too many high danger chances really in that game, aside from really the goal, obviously that Detroit scores, and then that huge save that Hart's making on Larkin. And then the huge save with like 3 seconds left that Hart makes, those are pretty much their best chances of the game, right? So, like, when you're limiting a team to those many high danger chances, obviously it's going to help in your success. And then, as you were saying, Yariv, I mean, in terms of like Detroit and just a team like that, and the way the Flyers are kind of trending right now with some of their players, you can tell that a lot of guys are, their confidence is building, and it's not just the young guys. Personally, I thought the defense had a really good game. For them only to give 1 goal up, that's a good thing, especially when you gave up 4 against Chicago, who isn't really the greatest team offensively. So that's a rebound game for them. I thought Ristolainen was really great, good at closing out a lot of plays in his own end. Provorov with a huge block, and just shows the warrior mentality where he has to get helped off by Ristolainen and then comes right back a couple shifts later, and it's just that Iron Man for the Flyers when they need him, right? So, and then a couple other players I thought that stood out as well is just Morgan Frost. Every game, I'm just seeing things that he's doing, and
Defensively too on the back checks.
yeah, on the back checks. But just even for me, like, I noticed offensively, like, there's certain things that he's doing where you just see, like, man, there's so much talent there and so much skill, and you see it starting to come out due to that confidence, because he's not afraid to try certain plays that earlier in the year he just was not trying, and it shows that it isn't a talent thing, but it's more like, how do we unlock a player like this to be willing to try these certain things at this level, right? And be willing to go into certain areas he was at other levels and had success at the NHL level because it can be difficult to adjust, right? Especially when you're playing against, all world defenders and players that have been in the NHL for years. As a young guy, can be tough. And Farabee too, I thought had a good game. Him and Frost for me were the most noticeable forwards last night, despite the fact they didn't get on the board. I thought they were their best forwards for the Flyers.
I think I think that was a great analysis. I totally agree with the Morgan Frost thing. Well, let's bring it up right now since we're already talking about Frost instead of me switching to another player because we'll get into those guys. So, first of all, with Farabee, I like how he's just slowly climbing back. I think he's really just kind of getting back into a groove. There is a second and a third gear to Farabee. I want to make that very clear to everybody.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, this is Farabee is what he is." I don't know why we keep doing that. It's been almost never true. So I'm really waiting for him to hit that next gear. I do like that he's been consistently productive, but I expect him to kind of hit another gear like he has before, and then he has a gear above that. But yeah, it's good to see how he's playing of late. Defensively, he's always been sound, so that's why he's still my Gagne Taves mix. Frost, 100% agree with you. The confidence has changed his game completely. He just looks like a real NHL forward now, like without question. He looks like a middle six forward in the NHL at the very minimum. And it looks like his youth is coming, is still there, obviously, by his age. And he's probably just scratching the surface. We don't know exactly where he'll go, but is it time to start talking about an extension for Morgan Frost? He obviously, I think the contract ends at the end of this year, unless I didn't make that up in my head.
Yeah. He'll be an RFA, so they'll have rights.
They'll have the rights to it. Probably my guess is about 2-3 years is what they have left in that UFA window or in that RFA window. So they'll probably realistically try to take him to max. My guess is they'll probably try to go for 3 years. Maybe give him something similar to Tippett, 1.5 to 2 million. If he'll do a 3-year deal, he'll probably want a 2. Or you could go longer term, but I don't know if that's the wisest move with Frost, just because you haven't seen him do it longer than like half a season so far.
Yeah, I agree. Likeliest for extension is probably a bridge deal, like you were saying, Yariv. I think it's kind of a carrot and the stick situation where, like, I don't know if I don't know if Frost. I mean, they want to give him all that too early because, like you said, he hasn't accomplished all that much, but he's scratching the surface. So, you give him that bridge deal. It's almost like a motivation type tactic, right? We see this in your game. We see it coming out now. Show it on a more consistent basis, and you're going to get that big long term deal in the future, right? So, I think that's the best move for them, right? If they end up getting,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but just to in case he stagnates, right? He's only making 2.5 million, right? In 2
exactly,
years,
for 3 years, which I mean, for a third line player or wherever you're going to play him next year, if the team's fully healthy, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
For a guy that might be able to score you between 40 to 60 points potentially, just based off the skill he has alone. And I mean, just to go over Frost and just what he's done this season, he has 22 points in 45 games, so that's his highest point total as an NHL player so far. He has 10 goals, 12 assists, 16 points in his last 22 games. So he's just showing more consistency in general, right? And he's just showing facets of his game I don't think we've really seen at this level. Like, personally, I never thought that we really got to see him use his shot much before this last stretch of 10-15 games, and now we're actually actively seeing him come in and use his shot. And I think, to be honest, he has a bit of an underrated shot where he can kind of beat goalies from distance. You saw him beat Mrazek the other night, and you've seen him beat a couple goalies from distance. 4 goals this season.
Don't you think he reminds you a little bit of Larkin?
In a sense, yeah. I don't know if he has
but
not as fast, but
pretty fast. But
that's a good, actually, comparable.
I was thinking about when I was watching Larkin yesterday. I was like, similar body type. I thought about back in the day, but even the shooting, the way he shoots,
similar body type. But I think they read the game in similar manners. So I could definitely see that as, like, I don't know if he's going to top out at the same level, but he might reach. I mean, I could definitely see him just getting into that game style where, as he gets more confident, you even see more skills where you see in Larkin's game kind of come out in his game.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you still think a 90-point season is potentially in Frost's future?
I don't know about 90, but I could see him hit 70, 75.
But why not?
Why not 90? Why not 90? My only thoughts is just I don't know. Like right now, he's getting the usage of a first line center. I just wonder if he's going to continue to get that. Like if you have a Couturier or bring another center in,
Yeah.
if he gets first power play, first line minutes, and he
Yeah.
gets all
I'm
those
talking about, I mean, if you're a
opportunities.
90-point player, you've
Yeah,
taken that spot from somebody.
yeah, exactly. So like he'll have to take it, right? And show that okay, this is my spot in the lineup. So I don't know if we've seen that yet. We're seeing steps to that though. Just
Do
in the
you
sense that he's almost a point a game guy in the last 20 games, right? So
and again, 90 is a lot, but I'm throwing it out there because I'm kind of like in my mind, are we like limiting him already to being like a 40 to 60-point player? You know what I mean? Where like if
my thoughts is
Frost
just
did
you want
this
to
a
have
year ago, I
yeah,
think we would still be like, oh, he could be
a
because
first liner, yeah.
a first line center, which is, you know, an 80 to 100-point player.
I think you have a point there, probably that a lot of I'm guessing a lot of fans too, and just people who are
Because
I
of
know
his age.
placing projections. They're thinking like he hasn't done it to this point, and it's we all know development's not linear. Look at Tage Thompson; he didn't break out till 25, so it's a certain
That's why I
possibility.
bring it up. That's the only reason
Yeah,
I bring it up. Not
exactly.
because I think you're wrong, or I think
Oh
I'm
yeah,
with you. If you ask me the same thing, I would say the exact same answer that you did.
it's a certain possibility. I think. I just think for a lot of people, they want to see more consistency because it's only been for a certain amount of time so far. But you have to also caveat that this is really only his first chance he's really gotten with like consistent top six line mates and actually like getting put back into game situations after making mistakes like in the past, right? I mean, as soon as you make a mistake, he's either dropped down in the lineup with inferior talent or he's back to the AHL. So like people have to remember this is really his first shot, in my opinion, at like a first
I,
full NHL year where he's getting a real chance. So
Totally. And I think I like that you brought that up because I think the defining thing that stops him from being sent back down is that even if he makes a mistake, which I argue he has not made many, he's been pretty solid.
yeah,
It's that he's still been effective and confident from shift to shift. And
yeah,
I listen to what Tortorella talks about understanding the momentum of the game. You realize a lot of these guys, they get intimidated. I think that's why they lose 6-0 to Boston. It's not that they literally are 6-0 so much worse than, but they're intimidated by the Boston Bruins.
and the
That team
fact,
came in
yeah.
here and just
Well,
hammered it home on them
I mean,
without a problem.
I don't blame the Flyers in that sense. I mean, obviously you want to play better against the Boston team, but if you're a young team and you're coming in against the best team in the league, that's obviously going
That's
to
in your
be a
head.
that's a tough one. First off, but then
That's led
also
by veterans, by the way,
yeah,
which is a young man's sport. Yeah, the best team in the league is led by like 40-year-olds.
but then you have to also factor into you think the Flyers players don't also know that the Bruins have only lost one game in regulation this season. I think
Absolutely.
that's in the back of their heads
But as an
too, right? So
athlete, don't you kind of tell yourself like, oh, we can be the ones to do that.
I mean, 100%. I just think when you have a young team, it's sometimes tough when you're playing, like you're saying, a group that is so conditioned in terms of their veterans that have been there before. I just think once one thing started to go wrong for them in that game, they just could never get it back, unfortunately. And that's the process of a learning experience with a young team, right? Like that is something, and that's a game that I'm sure, even though Tortorella said that's something we don't want to take away from that game. We just want to burn the tape and move on. But in itself, that is something that you look at and say, well, that is a learning experience because it shows that, well, that's not something we ever want to do again. We don't ever want to play like that again. We don't want to be in
Right,
that
of course.
mindset again. We want to, play our games, which is what they strayed away from. And I think it's probably due to what you were saying that, they're a little bit in their own heads against such a good team.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Because
mean,
the Flyers have better
overall,
goal. Flyers have a better goalie than the Bruins. Nobody talks about that. Flyer, in my opinion, Carter Hart's top 5 goalie in the NHL right now. I
yeah,
don't
I
care
would
if people
say.
agree with me or not. I'm just going off of skill. I'm not going off of stats.
Yeah, I'm not going off the stats either. I just if you put Hart, I mean, like on a team that is better than the Flyers, just in terms of their defensive play and overall talent, I think that helps his stats even more, right? And probably catapults him to top 10 level in terms of the stats.
If
I think just the just the way that the team somehow and sometimes has those duds of games, it just takes away from his stats, which
yeah,
kind of moves him away from the elite
but
conversation, despite the fact that he should be there in my mind.
yeah, and it's not even so much the duds of the one dud game. It's just really that losing period where the team had nobody available healthy.
Yeah, which kind of kills his stats too.
Yeah, it actually kills this whole season. I mean, if the Flyers never went through that, which maybe was necessary to even get to this point, so you know, but if Flyers don't have all the, and again, it's not an excuse. Other teams had huge injuries too, but if that doesn't happen, they're a little bit closer to a playoff spot. Maybe they're in a playoff spot right now. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Even
possible.
without Couturier and all that. So it just shows how close a lot of the, I guess, more middle of the road teams, which is where the Flyers really are. I mean, again, we're not at the bottom. I thought we were gonna get lucky and we're gonna end up at the bottom, but
Doesn't
we
seem
never
to be the
were.
case.
We're
Yeah,
not. We have one of the best goalies in the NHL.
it's hard.
It's
Yeah,
hard to do that. It's hard to tell a player
and
he's not even in
also,
his prime.
yeah, and
Not even
also, I
there
mean,
yet.
with a lot of the team being younger by default, there's going to be a natural progression there too with your younger guys, right? Like you can expect the performance at the beginning of the year from these younger guys to be what it is the whole season. They're obviously going to improve and progress as it goes
Yeah.
along, and that's what we've seen, and that's what we've seen contribute to the wins. So that's what I would tell fans that are maybe frustrated with the
I,
fact that the team is, improving uh, and technically getting a worse draft pick, because a lot of fans obviously are looking at the draft as the be all end all for the season. But I would say that, I mean, at least you have younger guys contributing in a sense, and you have guys even that are veterans. I would say probably playing the best hockey that they played in a while. If you look at like Ristolainen, even like a Sanheim, even a Kevin Hayes having his best season, Scott
I
Lawton.
don't think Sanheim's playing his best hockey.
I could agree there, but I'm saying he's not having a bad season.
No, no,
But
not at all. But he's got
yeah,
another gear
yeah, 100%. I think that was last season was probably like his best that we've seen, most likely.
so far.
But
Yeah,
yeah, but even Scott Lawton's having a career year, and I think it's a perfect segue kind of go into Lawton and just
yeah. I
what
was
he's
actually.
done.
Go ahead and good. You
Read your
can.
mind, what he's done so far, but we kind of wanted just to get into Scott Lawton. Is on a 56-point pace this season. He has 21 points in his last 22 games, essentially like top six level numbers. Not to say that that's what he is, but I mean, if you put him with the right talent, I think he can definitely produce at that level, which is what we've seen. You give him the opportunities. Is he, Yariv? Do you think he is the next captain of this team, just based on what you're seeing this season and the way he's been playing and just the responsibility that he's taking on due to everything that's kind of happened with the injuries and just the situations in games and all that?
I think he's going to go into next season as the favorite, but I think it does restart a little bit on him next year because there will be somewhat of changes coming to this locker room of some degree, right? The very least, Couturier, Atkinson, if they're back, right? That is a big dynamic change in that room, especially with Couturier, who is not the de facto captain, but obviously one of the candidates, and Cam Atkinson being one of the candidates. And then you add the fact that maybe the Flyers go out and get somebody elite that's a captain. Having said that, in the absence of all of these players, Scott Lawton has proven to be captain material. I think that's undeniable. The ability not only to step up emotionally, where Drew, who is one of his best friends, nobody talks about that either, to step up when a lot of the veterans that he grew up with left, as he's come up through the system, take ownership of the team and then raise his level of play. That is captain material.
Yes.
So if he is captain of the Flyers, I will have zero issues with it. And is it the most likely as of right now? I'd have to say yes, but I'm still open to the fact that, hey, look how well a lot of these guys are responding to John Tortorella. What would Sean Couturier turn into under John Tortorella? Just a thought of what Couturier really is as a player. And yeah, I have to leave that open. But and Cam Atkinson's relationship with Tortorella, but it's undeniable at this point, right? He's been excellent. It was
Yeah, I think
hero last night.
that's a great way to kind of just sum it all up, Yariv. And I tend to agree. I mean, if you just look at the way Lawton stepped up in the absence of those guys who are mainly the leadership group as well, I mean, that's something that's impressive, right? Because everybody knows on a hockey team, it's not just the guys who have the letters, right? Everybody, in a sense, has to be a leader at certain points. And it's always good to have more leaders than not. So I think in that regard, it's obviously a great thing for the Flyers, because it's showing that, not to say that we never knew Lawton was a leader before, because it was imperative that he definitely was, but it's showing there's even another level to those leadership qualities and abilities that he's kind of showing now, right?
Because
And
he turned
it,
into a man at 28 and not 23, 24 years old. Sorry,
yeah,
just want to state that out loud.
like we're saying, right? Like the development is not linear, and Lawton's a perfect case because he was never really supposed to be this guy. Like upon his draft, right, he was touted as an offensive guy, did not end up working that way. Went kind of down to the
Well,
AHL.
actually, if you look at his scouting report, this is exactly what he was supposed to be.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, that's
took
what
a
I'm saying.
lot longer to get there.
That's what I mean, right? It's not always gonna happen instantly, and I mean, it took him going to the AHL, rebuilding his game, having to play a different role until this opportunity came up for him, where he gets these minutes, he gets these on ice opportunities, more usage, and then you kind of see it coming out. And sometimes that's what it takes for guys, right? They're not always going to get the opportunity that affords them to develop at a certain pace. And I would argue that Lawton never got these opportunities in the past. So how can we judge if maybe he could have even done this earlier, right? If you're not getting the ice time, getting the power play time, getting the minutes. So now that he's getting it, he's kind of showing that if needed, he could do something like this. And I'd argue that, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see it being a more sustainable thing. But it's crazy, right? Like, so like I was saying, 21 points in his last 22 games. He has 12 goals this season. He's on pace for 20. He'd probably potentially have more if it wasn't for that injury sustained where he missed, like, what was it? I think about 4 or 5 games in November there, something like that. So he's showing that offensive ability, which people, I will say, thought probably was limited in the past, and they weren't sure that if he was already at his ceiling, which shows that he was not. So in terms of the captain stuff, I mean, I just think based on all that, front runner, as you said, obviously Couturier and Atkinson, I think are candidates too. I just think like the respect that those guys command, just being veterans in the league and what they've done, obviously they're going to be in the conversation. I just think the way Tortorella kind of raves about Lawton is something that we kind of got to read the tea leaves with this one.
The same way he
Raved,
talked about his buddy Boone Jenner, right? They're
yeah,
friends,
exactly, and
made him
he was
captain.
named the captain. Yeah, so I think it's a similar situation to your point with the Jenner stuff. Like Lawton isn't exactly like Jenner, but I mean, there's similar qualities there, obviously. So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Tortorella goes that route. And I mean, it would be, I think for this team and the way they're trending and the culture they're trying to build, Lawton is like your workman's type blue collar captain. And I think he sets an example for all the guys that, no matter what, we're bringing that effort, we're bringing the hard work, no matter what the circumstances are, right?
I think you're 100% right. I think he's like a Mike Richards type, right, from back in the day.
Yeah,
and that's why I leave it open, because Couturier is also all of these
also
things.
like that too. That's what I mean, right?
And a more elite version. But does he have the personality, which neither one of us will really know because we don't know him intimately?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Just like we don't know
Lawton does seem, I will say, like just in terms of the media and things like that, he does seem like a bit more outspoken. But like you're saying, Yariv, it's hard to know.
Always in all of the interviews. I've been in front of Coots quite a bit, more than Lawton actually.
That's what I mean, right? So like Couturier could do it as well. So it's just kind of up in the air to see where it goes. I would say there's not a bad choice for either, in my opinion.
I think what Torts' mindset was with the captaincy is I want to see everybody step up in a leader. Everybody know that it's up for grabs. I want to build. He said, I'm not picking one this year. I didn't think he was going to say this. I was wrong about that. He said, I'm not picking one this year, right? So he's kind of telling them all, like, none of you are really the captain, but I do acknowledge that Scott Lawton is leading candidate, right? But he's saying, like, that's why I think he's going to start over next year, because then he's going to say, all right, well, Lawton's at least got an A. You guys all know that. There's still 2 captaincies left for grabs. And even that top captaincy spot's still up for grabs. Yeah. He did an amazing job, but it's still there. One of you can still step up and get it. But I do think ultimately it's best to go to a veteran, somebody who is Lawton's age, Couturier's age. I think Atkinson might even be too old, honestly.
Yeah.
Unless
and
they
now
wanted
with the
to
surgery,
be
it's kind of up in the air. But
maybe that's what Torch would have done this year. Is maybe he would have been a temporary captaincy to Atkinson, because he's like, oh, I only have him for a year or 2, or whatever.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, don't put it on TK. Like, don't make their lives harder. I don't want it on a young guy. I want a veteran who's been around, who can handle the media, like Chris Pronger like stuff like that. Like you guys worry about me, the
I think
team.
there's
Like
a benefit in that, right? Like, not to say that they went the wrong way naming Giroux captain so young, but I do think that when you give a younger guy a captaincy, it could bear weight on them, especially depending on the
no,
performance of the team.
it will bear weight on them.
Yeah,
It's just how they choose to handle it. Like
yeah,
look, Jonathan Tays is an excellent captain. His team won multiple cups. I would never downplay him being a captain. Did it make his life harder being captain at that age? Oh, I think he was
probably.
19.
Yes, probably.
Definitely.
But
Definitely.
it probably helped him too in the long run in certain situations, right? Just going through the experiences of that, I would
I
say.
think I think it probably did, but you could argue that maybe it stifled some of his offensive development potentially, just mentally. Like, and maybe I'm completely making that up, but like you're in Philly, like to take on the weight of the media,
As a captain, it's tough, yeah.
it sucks. It destroys people, and it's destroyed veterans.
But
And
yeah, I'm just
it's
thinking
like
of
a
Richards,
curse.
though.
Yeah, it's
But
a
he was a young guy, but I mean, even him later on, it
it.
wasn't a good situation, right?
Yeah, like guys in their even their early 20s, I don't think it's a horrible idea, and obviously it's worked in cases. And some guys are just leaders, and that is what it is. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Like a guy like
Yeah,
Jonathan Tate is a great
or like a
example.
Nate
Like,
McKinnon, right? He's
or,
just gonna
yeah,
lead nonetheless. Like,
Sidney Crosby, even like it doesn't matter. Some guys are what they are, and you can't change that in them. But to add that extra weight, like I think maybe Scott Lawton is such a great story from being almost waived in an expansion draft to ending up, one of the faces of the
yeah,
franchise,
captain potentially, point per game almost just in this recent stretch. Like, it's just a great,
underdog player.
yeah, it's just a great story for Lawton, and I mean, it just shows ultimately the point that we tend to make often on this podcast that development is not a linear thing in terms of hockey and the NHL, and a lot of it for a lot of players can be based on usage and just the situations and the opportunities they're afforded.
Kind of
There's a
like
lot of
the
guys.
I like the thought of. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I like the thought of Lawton as captain. The more I
Me
think about
too. Yeah,
it reminds me
it's
of the
pretty
Mike
good.
Richards that we want. Like we got talent wise the Mike Richards we wanted, but the relationship with the team and what ended up happening is not the way we saw Richards. We saw this like Bobby Clark like figure.
Yeah,
You really think about Lawton. He seems like the type of like a lifer flyer. He's never going to
yeah,
ask for too much money that he's got to go. I
yeah.
guess if you're in a complete rebuild, yeah, that I can understand. But he seems like he could be a lifelong flyer,
He wants
wearing a
to
C,
be. Yeah, he
punching people in the face for the jersey. You know what I mean?
wants to be here and wants to be a part of rebuilding the team, and that's just a sign too that like, that is the perfect guy that you want because there's not always a veteran who might be willing to go through that, right? Like sometimes veterans
I think
aren't
his
going to want
game
to
would
go through.
elevate,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Well, it is if we're
It
watching
already
it.
has, right?
Yeah,
Under
yeah.
under the weight of the C, he stepped it up because he kind of has
Technically,
our C.
he's the leadership figure. If you just point to the fact that well, he's the only
He's the
one
only
that
one with
has a
an
letter.
A.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so he
yeah.
is basically de facto leader just in terms of that.
But you, but
And
you
I
put
think
a
Tortorella looks at it that way too,
But that's
probably.
what I said. He's minimum an assistant captain. Everybody like that's not going away,
No,
right?
yeah.
But he still wants somebody to take that C.
Mhm.
It maybe will be uh Lawton, but I like that he's leaving it over. I'm curious and all this. So I
Yeah,
guess throughout this game, I do want to bring up the Provorov block shot.
yeah.
That was just a wild thing to see Provorov and then to watch Risto.
Carry him off after. Yeah,
Like it wasn't even like a carry. He was like still on the ground. He
pushing
was
him.
sledding him, and then
Yeah,
Provorov's not even confused about the situation. He's like
yeah.
100% wheel me off this ice.
I
He's
think
like
he,
this
I think he took a 94 mile per hour shot to
to
the
the
ankle. So like,
yeah.
that's tough, man. Like, I will just say that
They
like
miss a shift
when
once
you take
again.
it off the outside of the ankle like that to the bone, like you have to factor in that there's no padding there. Like they have those little clear skate guard protectors that
Right.
players have been wearing that is supposed to curb your foot getting broken. But I'm sure he's got a very big bruise in that spot
Yeah.
today. Despite that, it just shows the guy's a warrior. And even with all the noise surrounding him, he's still bringing his A game on a nightly basis. I thought last game was one of the best games the York and Provorov pairing have had since they've been put together, just in terms of limiting quality chances. They were playing up against Detroit's top players the whole night.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, shout out to York. I wanted to mention him as well. He had a couple plays, man, where he's just looking very good, and he's we're seeing from him what we kind of expect, right? He's that guy on defense that you give him the puck in too much time and space, and he's going to use it and show the dynamic abilities within his game, which we saw 2 spinorama type moves off carrying the puck in the ozone that end up in pretty good chances. And I think York, is building as well, and I think he's learning how to kind of adapt offensively on the right side as well, because people have to factor in he's still a young guy and he's playing his offside, and that factors in for a defenseman a lot, right? Because there's a lot of situations where he's taking the puck off his backhand and he has to switch very quickly, and that can be tough, right? If you're getting pressured, taking the puck that way on your backhand and being able to turn it around so quickly up the ice. So I thought York was really good, Provorov as well, and that pairing continues to grow. In terms of the defense, I kind of am not sure about Sanheim D'Angelo. We kind of talked about this off the air. I don't know if that's the best stylistic fit. I kind of do want to see Sanheim and Risto back together, especially with Risto playing a bit better defensively. I think, like you were saying, Yariv, like Sanheim hasn't been his best offensively. I think maybe putting Risto there and how he's been more consistent defensively, that might open Sanheim up a bit. I'm not. What are your thoughts there? What do you think on that?
I think they're using Sanheim like they're using Provorov. Like they're playing very similar roles, where I feel like Sanheim's role was always a little more open-ended, and now they're both kind of the stable force on their pairing.
In terms of being defensive stalwarts, yeah.
And you still see Sanheim push the play up the zone, but him and Provorov, I feel like until this team is good, and I mean like good again with possession, which we're still not a great possession team. I feel like that's where their numbers will start going up. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I feel like they play far too conservatively.
But there's a reason behind that, because I mean, obviously they're playing with partners. Not to say that York and D'Angelo are bad defensively, but those guys are more known for their offensive game, obviously, versus the defensive parts, right?
And that's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. It's like they're playing to that specific role, and I feel like that's happening to both of them. Where when Risto was playing with Sanheim last year, Sanheim was the offensive driver, and I think that was the idea of putting Risto with Provorov. And, but when I watch Risto, I think it was against Anaheim, right, where he scored that beautiful breakaway goal.
Yeah, and then Dex Max Jones as well.
Yeah, like I think what we're seeing here over the smaller sample size, over these, 11 games or whatever the Flyers are on this tear, I think this is more of the Risto that we can hopefully have over the Tortorella era. I think there was a lot of breaking down the D and now building it back up. Everybody wants to jump that it's a cooked, finished thing. I guarantee Tortorella will say that is not the case with any of these guys. You can see there's something building here. I think there probably will be some more changes. I don't know about D'Angelo's long-term position here, because we already have York that's already going to start sneaking into D'Angelo's.
And you have Adder too, who's kind of a similar type.
And you have him on the shortest contract of the defensemen. So I could see him being easily, actually, I think most likely the first one out the door of this D crew. Everybody keeps talking about Provorov and Sanheim. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I think it's obviously D'Angelo. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think they overpaid for a guy they're going to have only for 2 years, but that was kind of obvious. I don't have a problem with his money. But I think he's a good stopgap into that until York can come up and take that mantle, the number one power play guy, which could be maybe end of next year, right? Maybe it's not the beginning of next year. But I do see the defense forming a little bit more. I think it's a really good sign. And let's talk back on the goaltender, because let's get into a little bit of tonight's game that's upcoming. There was kind of the send down of Ersan. Nobody should be confused. I mean, I know Tortorella already said it publicly. Nobody should be confused of why he was sent down. He was sent down.
Performance based, yeah.
It's obviously contract stuff. I said this would happen. This is the smart move to make, whether people agree with it or not. Bless you.
Don't lose an asset. Yeah.
You do not want to give up on Sandstrom. I'm sorry. I don't agree with people. I don't agree with people on almost anything, it seems like, anymore. You keep the asset. You don't know what Sandstrom is yet. He's still pretty young. He's shown talent as well. And why would you want to lose him for nothing? Where maybe a team
Yeah.
is desperate for a goalie and could use him for a playoff run and at least get a third round, fourth round pick for who knows. But what I'll say is he's going to sit the bench, but he's probably going to play a game tonight against Winnipeg. Maybe the Flyers do go back to back with Hart. It is possible. But I assume that Sandstrom will get the start here. Ersson will go and continue to play well. I think he already played a game with the Phantoms so far, maybe even two.
Yeah.
And then Sandstrom gets the call tonight. What do you think about the move, Vasili? Obviously, you understand why it's happening, but how do you feel Sandstrom is going to do against Winnipeg? Assuming he starts.
Yeah. I would assume he starts. I mean, Hart had a pretty busy game last night, so I would imagine that they're not going to go back to back with him. I mean, it's a possibility just because obviously he's the hot hand, so you never know. Maybe Tortorella feels like, with a hot goalie, better chance to get a win. But I think it's a conducive to get Sandstrom in there, get him feeling good about his game, just because the last stretch has been rough for him, and I think kind of in the situation where the Flyers were with their three goalies, I mean, it's a difficult situation, but it's also a good situation to be in personally. And just in my opinion, because you can never have too many goalies that are NHL caliber. And it seems like the Flyers have three guys that
Exactly.
can all be NHL goaltenders for them if they need it. So that's a good thing to have. And it's a position of strength in this league, right? Because not all teams have three goaltenders, and frankly, most do not have three goaltenders that can play competently and give teams a chance to be in games at the NHL level.
Especially
That's
not
typically not.
three young NHL caliber
Yeah,
goalies in their
exactly. That
early
are
20s or
yeah, right.
22.
So
What is it? 23 to 26?
yeah, I believe Hart's 24, Ursan's 23, and Sandstrom, I believe, would be the oldest at 25. So
25, maybe 26 at this
maybe
point.
26. So like it's a great position for them to be in, and obviously for Sandstrom getting sent, or not Sandstrom getting sent down, Ursan getting sent down, it's nothing performance based, as we said, right? He's 5-0, he has a shutout. If they could keep him up, I'm sure they would. But just having a three goalie rotation, I don't think it's beneficial to anybody. You need to get these guys reps for them to improve their
And if
game because they're
anything, you
still.
want Airson to continue to play more than
That's what I
Sandstrom.
mean. He's a young goalie, right? Like, and as a goaltender, you need reps to improve your game. Speaking from experience, that's typically the case. The more you play, the more shots you face, the easier it is to adjust to things and build your game and add certain features and elements to your game in terms of like technique, stuff like that, right? And what's going to work, what's not going to work. And it helps you learn the league because, I mean, Urson and even Sandstrom and even Hart, they're all still young goalies, and I'm sure they are not all accustomed fully to the NHL and what the shooters are bringing at all levels, right? Especially Sandstrom and Ursa, because they're not facing them on an every night basis because they're not the starters at this level in the NHL, right? So it's a learning process for all of them. I think for Sandstrom, it's kind of overblown, to be honest. Like I think he's played pretty well and he's been a competent backup for the Flyers. It's just the fact that a lot of the time he hasn't had goal support, and I would say majority of Sandstrom's games and gameplay came during that stretch where the team was very injured and they weren't
Mm-hmm.
scoring much to begin with. So I'm interested to kind of see how he does the rest of the year now that the team has been scoring a lot more. I believe the Flyers are averaging in this last stretch of about, I think, 12 to 15 games. It's something like 3.59 goals per game, something like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty high. So, I mean, that should help Sandstrom out. Obviously, as a goalie.
I think it's a little lower than that. I think it's like
Okay.
probably 3-4 now
Okay,
because we
yeah.
only had 2 goals against Detroit.
But yeah, most likely. So it's dropped a bit,
Maybe
but
something
I'm
like
citing
that.
stats from a little bit ago. But nonetheless, I mean, like Sandstrom, that's going to help him, right? Because if you're a goalie, you got to factor in, right? When you get goal support, it takes pressure off you, lets you be more comfortable, play your game. You know, in the back of your mind, okay, like my team isn't only going to score 2 goals tonight. So that's a little margin for error when you're a goalie if you know the fact that your team pretty much only going to score 2 goals, which is what the Flyers were maxing out at for most of the season before this run here, right? So I think
Mm-hmm.
that'll help him just in mindset. And I mean, he played pretty good with the Phantoms on his conditioning stint. Shout out to Bill Meltzer. He tweeted this out. With the 7 games, Samstrom was 4-1-2 with the Phantoms, 239 goals against average, 911 save percentage. So that's pretty good numbers. And obviously the AHL, the numbers aren't always going to speak to the level that the goalie's playing at, just because the defensive structure isn't as good as it is at the NHL level. So I think Sandstrom could be a really good backup for the Flyers, to be honest. I think too there might be a possibility for him to even be a starter somewhere as well. He's still a young guy.
Yeah.
And most goalies don't come into the league till about
Well,
25,
now
right?
he's on
Yeah.
schedule. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. He's on a
exactly.
normal goalie path.
Normal NHL goalie schedule. So
Yes.
like I wouldn't surprise me, let's say hypothetically, if down the line, I mean, he went somewhere else and ended up being a starter. I don't know
Or
what's going to
even
happen
just a
with.
competent backup
Yeah,
somewhere. You know what I
exactly,
mean?
exactly. Or even a backup here. Like I don't know what's ultimately going to happen with the goalie situation. I mean, I would assume and project that going forward, and just the way that Tortorella seems to be very fond of Urson in his game, that the Flyers are likely going to be going into next season with it being Hart and Urson as their tandem. That would be my guess.
Probably.
And Sandstrom's on a 1 year deal, so like it wouldn't be surprising if they do move on from him.
You could trade him on
Um,
the trade deadline.
yeah, trade him at the trade deadline potentially for a piece, or some sort of asset. Like, why not maximize the value of what you potentially have? But for now, I think just let it play out. I mean, can be a competent backup. I think that he's given the Flyers a lot of chances to win. They just haven't given him the goal support. So I think it's not the end of the world that Urson goes down, and Sandstrom isn't the worst situation to be in as your backup. I think it's probably a pretty good situation to be in considering how he's played. If you've watched the games, he's made some big saves at key times to keep the team in it, and I think he'll continue to do that. I just hope they get him some goal support, and that'll help him with the confidence, right? Because as a goalie, you don't get that support; it's tough. And I mean, hopefully, they can get him to games that aren't just back to backs, because I think he's kind of getting shafted there a bit, where he's really only playing on back to backs, it seems, and that's a
That's
tough
the
position to
job of
be in.
that's the job of a backup goalie, though. I mean,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
as the backup goalie, you were like the fill-in. Most goalies, I feel like they got to take whatever they can get. You know what I mean? We didn't say this stuff about Brian Elliott. You know what I mean?
that's
Like
true. Yeah,
that's his job. If he wants to be an NHL goalie, he's got to be able to play
gotta
teams back to
adapt. Yeah,
back. You're also getting longer rests, which sucks at times, but like physically, you should be fit at least. You shouldn't be worn down either. So,
yeah.
I know that's not an easy thing, but if he wants to do it, and even thinking out loud here, I mean, who's to say the Flyers don't keep three of them for next year and go, well, what are we gonna do? Bring in some random other person that we don't really know if he's a good goalie. This guy at least is in his mid-20s. He'll sign here for cheap. Erson's still locked up. Like you know what I mean? Like they could
Yeah.
decide to bring him back too, for all we know.
Yeah, it depends, obviously. I wouldn't be surprised to see it. I just would assume Sandstrom isn't
Then
looking to
who?
play in the
Then
AHL.
right? Okay, that might be the case. But that's assuming that somebody has a contract for him at the
That's
NHL
true.
level,
So
right?
that's true,
A
right?
one-way contract.
That's also
What
an
what if,
assumption being
what if
made.
we're offering the same contract that's being offered to him around the league,
He
and he's
might
like, okay,
choose to stay in a situation he's familiar with, obviously.
yeah,
So.
where there are two other young goalies, including him, and not like a veteran of like 30
Where it's
years
even a
ahead of
harder
him.
a harder battle potentially in
Yeah.
terms of cementing a spot. So yeah, that's a good point to bring
Just
up,
saying
Yuri.
out loud. I don't know. I don't know. Or he
No,
goes back to Sweden. He can go back to Sweden too. It's
that's a
possible.
great assessment. Nonetheless, I think they're in a great position goaltending wise. I don't think this is anything to dwell on.
And yeah,
And then you look at Kolosov and potentially Fedotov as well in the
maybe we
pipeline. So
sneak Fedotov out of Russia.
man, like it's a crazy situation for the Flyers. Like they have a lot of great goaltending depth, and I think this kind of segues perfectly for us into a next topic too. Because I mean, similar to the goaltending depth, is something we wanted to bring up as well. They got a lot of wingers, a lot of wing depth, and I'm
Yeah.
wondering even with both, like when's the time and when are they going to subtract from that depth to add in other places? And that's why it's such a good problem to have, right? Because you can potentially do that. What do you think about the wingers, Reeve? I mean, just looking at it, there's wingers that are injured. I mean, in Atkinson even, and they're still. And Kevin Hayes is even playing the wing when he's a center. I mean, there's just so many wingers. Even if you look in the AHL, you see Forster potentially poised to potentially come up. Lixell, players of that ilk. What's your thoughts on all the wing depth?
I think that's why you got to take a serious look at Jay O'Brien and see if he's an actual prospect at this point. Look, I think it's a huge hole in the franchise. I can't state it outside of that. We used to be strong down the middle in the prospect depth. It's much easier to convert a center to a winger. That still remains to be true. Obviously, look at Kevin Hayes. I think we should be looking to draft centers, and I think that's what we can expect to have. Maybe add one through free agency, but I think it's a concern. I don't think it's a huge concern as of this moment, just because of the age of at least at the younger level, like the non-NHL ready guys.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a huge concern there yet, especially with Cutter Gauthier, obviously slated to be, workshopped into a NHL center over the years. But I do think that inevitably this, like, where we're really missing it is where Sean Couturier was playing. I think that's the imminent panic button center depth. But we don't have that next Morgan Frost plus center, that Claude Giroux like center in the system that is a play driving specific center. We have the other type of guys, and I think Noah Cates, I still stand by this, is a very special player. He is doing stuff that Sean Couturier was doing.
He looks like a young Couturier. Yeah,
like
mentioned this to us.
Yeah, like he does give me hope that with Frost and Noah Cates down the middle and Coots at number one,
it's not a bad
and that Lawton obviously playing the way he is. You move Lawton to wing or you move Cates back to wing or whatever. That's a lot more comfortable for the next couple years. But we really need
first line high elite.
Yeah, like guy, don't get me wrong. If the draft were to happen tomorrow, and let's say the Flyers took number 2, I probably would go Michkov. I'll be honest with you.
I think, despite the fact they need a center, I think the Flyers in their position, at least drafting wise, they got to go best player wherever they are.
I would go with the highest chance of a generational talent.
That's what I mean. You got to go best player no matter where you are.
He is the player. Him and Fantilli, and you could argue me and Fantilli as well, but I still see Michkov as, again, he's the best. And shout out to Steve Kornianos. Watch his recent thing on Michkov, and I agree with him. He is the best juniors rushing goal scorer ever.
Yeah, his shot on goal totals are insane. They're like just to get into it, like his shot on goal totals for Michkov, I mean, they're surpassing the likes of Ovechkin, Kovalchuk, things like that.
Listen to the name. Those are Ovechkin's about to be the best goal scorer in NHL history.
So it's not something to balk at for sure, but
you can't balk at that at all.
Yeah, I think too, even though
consider, it's very hard to even say that you can consider passing it for a guy you think could be a number 1 center in the league.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about historically potentially drafting the next best goal scorer of all time.
Yeah, exactly. So like in that situation, that's what I mean. I think the Flyers, just where they are in their trajectory right now as a team, they're not in the position to not go best player available. Like if you can get, even if it's a defenseman who's a generational type defenseman, hypothetically, like go that route, go for the best player that you could possibly get. And just to dial back to the wing stuff, I think that even though they do have that wing depth, it shouldn't affect their draft mentality that way. And you're right, like even obviously you want to improve the center depth. I think with the wings, it's an interesting situation, right? Because you have Farabee, you have Konechny, who are solid wingers, middle 6 top line guys potentially. Obviously Konechny's top line. Farabee could potentially be to that point. We have not seen him get there yet, but I believe he could definitely become a top line guy. And then you have Atkinson, Bobby Brink, Owen Tippett, Tyson Forster in the wings, things like that. There's just a lot of wingers. So I'm wondering at a point, do the Flyers say, well, since we lack depth in the center areas, or a situation where you're open to trading maybe, 2 younger wingers, or for a bona fide elite center potentially, or even
find that guy,
or even let's say hypothetically, as much as I would hate to trade a guy like a Bobby Brink because he's such a young player, or even like one of these wingers that we're mentioning here, let's say you trade a Brink or a Forster hypothetically for a center that's similar to them, where they're tearing it up in the AHL, they're looking good, but we just need a center, and maybe the other team just needs a winger. And that's sometimes the reality of it in hockey, right? Where it's not always gonna play out the way you think in terms of who you draft is going to make it to your roster. Sometimes you do have to make these tough decisions. So I'm wondering, maybe with the depth, if it gets to that point, I do think I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some guys on wing move potentially for center, just because they have so many of them, right? And you're lacking so much depth there. Even though I think it'd be tough to move on from some of these young guys because we haven't seen them at the NHL level, I think it could be worth it.
I think the problem with that is I think we're on a season by season basis with that, because
100%,
not all of them will make it. Some will have injury problems, and at the end of the day, we'll probably be left with 3 scoring right wingers
potentially.
We have more than that on paper. Look at Atkinson. We don't even know if he can play.
That's
Uh,
true.
y-
We're factoring him in, but who knows, right? So
yeah. How many injuries does Allison have?
yeah,
And what happens if he disappears and boom, that he's no longer a third line option? Then Forster's like,
yeah,
all right, well, or Brink, and you're like, well, you got that spot next year
yeah.
already,
It's true.
right?
Like I think it's definitely something the team's gonna have to assess. There's a lot of
Right. I'm just saying it's a year by year thing. I think at this point, but
yeah, there's a lot around it. I think I'm saying like to your point. I mean, like it goes both ways, right? Like the team probably sees we have a wealth, but they also probably think like we can't be
reactive.
reactive and make these trades and then look at our wing depth now,
You,
right?
I
So I
think,
think there's both sides.
I think they have to get more creative. Like obviously, Dylan Strom. He's what was he 26 when he was a free agent?
Yeah,
He's
about
just
there,
26.
25, 26, something like that.
So he's probably the oldest you'd want to go with. Obviously a
In terms of
real
free agent
nice
center,
home
yeah.
run, yeah, for Washington,
Hmm.
obviously. But I think if we really want to solve the problem quickly, it would be to try to like scout around, find out who's
Potentially available.
underutilized,
Yeah.
who's got a deep prospect pool. Maybe they're a little heavy at center. And you like you said, maybe you package up a winger and a defenseman, whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
Or pick.
But
Who knows?
yeah,
Yeah.
or just a pick. But I just don't know if that's the time to do that because the Flyers are so close to this draft. They just picked Cutter Gauthier. I just wouldn't react to it yet, but without a doubt, it's something they need. Like
Yeah, for
even if
sure.
Morgan Frost turns into a 60-point player, we
There's still no
still
guarantee about Couturier and all that. So
right, exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you read my mind. There's still the issue of we don't have any of these guarantees. So I don't know. And then there's always the free agent option. So I just it's so hard to tell.
it's
Uh
tough. There's a lot in terms of the roster
there's a
building. I
lot of
think for the
problems created of
yeah,
late.
I agree, and I
I'll
think just
say
with
that.
the roster building of this team in the future, like there's just a lot of pieces that are in play that we're just not sure where they're going to land yet. So I think it's just a
Yeah.
lot of it's patience and kind of seeing what these young guys can become, and then a lot of it is just going to be opportunity and what uh, the draft brings too, because it depends. Like, despite the fact that they might not, it might not be the most popular thing that they're winning right now. Even though they're still in the bottom 10 in that lottery. So, like, even though it's not a high chance, you really never know what's going to happen. How many
Yeah.
times did the Rangers move up or the Devils move up like 3, 4 times in the last 10 years? So, like, I would not be
When the
surprised.
Flyers got second overall pick, weren't they like just out of a playoff
13th,
spot?
they were
Yeah.
13th. Like, that's what I'm trying to say, right? Like, unless you're about 15th, 16th picking the draft, if you're below 14th and below, the odds are there for you to potentially move up in any capacity just based on what
Yeah.
we've seen in the past with the draft. So who knows what's going to really unfold? Like there's a lot up in the air based on that. I think.
So going along, you bringing up the centers, right? Timo Meyer, right? You had a note here that Timo
Yes.
Meyer has been rumored by the fourth period that he's going to be available, probably, I
Yeah, he
guess.
was on their 2023 trade watch list. He's an RFA this summer. Essentially, the deal with it is that
Why would they trade him?
$10 million qualifying offer, Yariv. So I don't know if they want to pay him $10 million. I'm not sure if I want it.
Why
I
would
would
we
want
want
to.
to pay him $10 million?
Yeah, I don't. I'm not sure if I would want to pay him $10 million. I just thought it was an interesting note to bring up that
So they
he
have to
potentially is
pay
available.
him 10 mil if they re-sign him.
That's technically his qualifying offer. Yeah, so they
Okay,
have to pay him
so they're
that.
screwed.
But that does not mean just because you sign him for $10 million for a 1 year deal, it doesn't mean that that's what he's going to get necessarily on his next long term deal. So it's an interesting situation. Obviously, I wonder if they kick the can down the road, sign with the $10 million and try to trade him again, or they just try to
Or
trade him
just
in the
wait to see if you
offseason.
can figure out a contract that's going to be because look,
Less than that.
if he maybe he takes another jump. I mean, he's still relatively young. He
Yeah,
could be a $10 million player. I think he's on the brink of that, but he's probably closer to like 8.5, right?
nine
But then
million
again,
maybe. Yeah,
what's it called? Bold. I mean, if it's 9 million at that point, you just
give him the 10 maybe.
I guess and take the term. Um, but like Matthew Boldy getting 7 million, I thought it was a little crazy. Um,
Yeah, he's a young winger. The thing is, he hasn't. The reason why I see Minnesota did that is because he's young, so they figure, you know what, let's lock him up now at this number, and if he outperforms it, it looks like a great deal. But it's a risk because he's doing it this season, but there's no guarantee it's going to
it's
continue.
a
Though I
lot of
think he's
money.
going to
It's a lot
be
of money for
at
a young player.
20, 21, 22-year-old guy. He's a young guy. It's
It's
a risky
Farabee.
move.
It's like
Yeah,
giving Farabee
basically
$7 million a
7 million.
year. We have him for
Yeah,
5.5. That's why I'm kind of like,
it's a
okay.
risky one. I'm just looking at Myers' stats here. I mean, so far this season, he has 47 points in 47 games, 27 goals, 20 assists. So I mean, like he's point a game guy. Last season, he had 76 points in 77 games. Like I'd be personally
I
more
mean, he's a great
comfortable.
player.
I'd be personally more comfortable in an $8 million range. I just wonder, the Flyers are looking for high end talent. He's obviously a high end guy. I don't know if they would be targeting him because he's a winger.
You'd
That's
have
the
to
problem, right?
you'd have to look at him if he's available.
Yeah,
But
exactly. They have to do their due diligence, obviously, because they're looking to get talent. Obviously, he's a winger. They probably want to go for a
I don't
center,
think they
most likely.
would. Yeah, I don't think they would. I don't think they would invest in him unless like Kevin Hayes was gone.
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering how that all plays into it, right? Like how the money moves around. And I think there's going to be some moves we might not be expecting in terms of like trying to free up certain cap space and things like that. So Hayes could be one of those guys. Obviously, JVR will be on the move. As you're saying, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to get creative and try to move D'Angelo potentially because that is a $5.5 million free up. And then you also have York and Adam waiting kind of
He's
to take
having a
that
good.
spot.
It's not like he's having a terrible year. He's on pace for what
About
45,
40. Yeah, and that's good for a
45 to
defense.
50
For what
points.
he does, I mean, I'm certain that a playoff team, maybe that needs some help on the power play, they would
Or
be
even just a
open.
team that's doesn't
Looking for
have that
offense from the
role.
back end. Yeah, offense from the
Maybe like
back
their
end.
middle. Maybe it's a team like Buffalo. I'm just using an example. It's like middle
Well, they're
of
on
the
the
road.
brink. They're on the brink. They could
That's what
potentially
I'm
make the
saying. And
playoffs, right?
they're like, oh, we're a defenseman away. He's locked up for 1 year at a reasonable cost.
This is a good move for us.
Yeah,
Exactly. I
exactly.
wonder,
Get
like,
your second round pick back.
just to finish off with the Meyer stuff, like, what would you be comfortable potentially if, let's say, the Flyers were going to go after him? And let's just be hypothetical here for the sake of the
I'd be
exercise. What would
um
you be comfortable giving up potentially to acquire him?
nothing.
Nothing you wouldn't be looking
For
for
what?
to get.
To early sign him or to pick him up this year?
So let's say you sign him now, and then you get the chance, obviously, to give an extension potentially because you've now
But
signed him
I had to trade for the ability
for
to sign
him.
him.
Yes, exactly.
Not interested.
Not interested. You wait till
We
UFA
need the
potentially.
assets more than we need the player.
That's a good way to assess it.
I have too many cap issues right now and 3 players with large caps with undetermined financial implications, which is the problem with the Goudreau signing to begin with. It's why you're out.
Because
How? How can you?
yeah, you can't get cap compliant
How
before the season, right?
Yeah,
So.
it's like there's no way to get under the cap. I'd have to if I can move Kevin Hayes to you, which they're not going
Yeah.
to take, right?
No, because they're trying to get rid of money for a reason, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. I'm screwed.
The only thing that makes sense, like just
I
in
don't
terms of
want to
value,
be
just
involved.
in terms of
I go
value,
Ryan O'Reilly.
yeah, I you read my mind personally. Those are the two options. I mean, if they're looking to add big time guys this season, I mean Larkin and O'Reilly would be the guys I'm comfortable with, just for the fact that they're centers.
Larkin is a guy I would invest in.
Yeah, obviously, because he's got the
damn
age
good on this team.
Yeah, the age, the speed, just
in our new jerseys that are coming next year.
The role he's going to play. Yeah, those. I'm interested.
Oh yeah, that is news. If you guys didn't hear about that, there are new jerseys coming next year.
I'm kind of interested, man. I hope they go back to the setup they had during the Richards Carter era. I want the black one.
Yeah,
back.
with the shoulders.
Yeah, with the orange, a little bit of orange.
Yeah,
I think we need it. I think we need Flyers back in black.
You know when that was? That's when NHL. I think it was 2007.
Around there,
they made the switch to the skill stick.
Oh, dude! Yes,
that's when I first got my Xbox.
OV was on the cover that year.
Yes, and I first got my Xbox, and I remember playing that NHL game versus the older NHL games, and you're like, "Oh my god!" You're like, "This is garbage. This is incredible."
And you know what?
Obsessed with NHL.
It's hilarious because EA hasn't made really any changes since then in the last 20 years. So it's amazing in terms of that.
Hey, they're due.
Yeah, they're due to add another big feature in.
Yeah.
But, just to finish off with the Myers stuff, I mean, if they were gonna go for him, personally, I don't think it's gonna happen. I just thought it was interesting. The other teams mentioned and rumored
might go for him. I don't think it's that crazy.
No, but I just think
dude. He's a play driver, but he's.
I just think they're probably gonna look, if they're gonna make a big move. I just think they're probably gonna look for a center. I mean, that's just like writings on the wall. just kind of everything we've laid out.
Honestly, let's see what happens. I agree with you. I think logic points to what you're saying. At this point, like, let's see what happens.
Who knows?
Where do we draft? Who do we draft? When is Cutter Gauthier coming? I feel like who's going to be
There's
healthy?
A lot
Is Couturier healthy?
Out in the open,
What happens if Couturier looks amazing when he comes back, which none of us are expecting? What happens?
Possibility.
Then all of a sudden, I already hear people. I was listening to Jason Martinez. He had a nice episode where he invited his.
That was a great episode. I heard that as well.
But and I kind of stopped listening at this point, though I could tell Martinez was kind of shocked. But he was like, "So you don't think that Couturier is like
a lead player?"
He's like, He's like, I think he's kind of average. I'm like,
I heard that as well.
Selkie winner. I'm like. Whoa. I guess there is no. That's like saying Anze Kopitar is an average player. He's like a decent player in the NHL. Yeah, Anze Kopitar. Yeah.
I mean, the impact he makes.
Nice player.
The impact they both make at both ends of the ice. Both ends of the ice.
I'd stab somebody. Can you imagine getting an Anze Kopitar in his prime? That's like getting Leon Draisaitl with the defensive ability. Like, come on, dude.
Crazy.
That's a guy who probably would have more of a Hall of Fame career if LA didn't have that fall apart in between and needed him.
I mean, I still think he's pegged for the Hall of Fame just with the cup wins and
no, absolutely. I was just mean like, I guess maybe now we don't talk about him anymore. Like, as one of the best players in the league.
I mean, Kopitar doesn't get the respect he deserves, in my opinion.
No, I don't think he does.
Almost a point. Still, and I mean, similar to Couturier, I just think a lot of those players get underlooked, right? Because they make it look easy out there when it really isn't what they're doing. It's not easy.
Look at Bergeron.
It's not easy. Dude. It's not easy being a player like that who typically when they're on the ice, the puck is usually in the offensive zone and they're not defending. That's such a big part of their games, right? Being able to control the puck possession due to how they are defensively. And just to finish off with the Meyer stuff, I was going to say, I mean, New Jersey and the Islanders were the other or New Jersey and the Rangers were the other teams rumored in there. That the fourth period mentioned. So potentially could be a guy coming in the Metro Division nonetheless. I think if the Flyers were going to trade for him, it's probably going to be like a package like you're probably going to have to give up a Forster or a Brink. Probably that 2024.
That's my point. I'm just
probably that 2020. Probably that 2024 first round pick as well, and maybe something else even. So it'll be a big package for a guy that, potentially Brink or Forster could become him. So you never know, right?
I think the position the Flyers are in, they're in no position to make that kind of move for that kind of player.
That's an over-the-top type of move, right? Like if you're the Rangers who are in that win-now situation, makes sense for them.
Exactly. Totally. Yeah. 100% with you on that one, Vasili. If it's a player that we can build our team around, that we don't
make like a Larkin, hypothetically.
Yeah, exactly. Because we have a Konechny, we have a high-scoring winger. We potentially have another one in Atkinson if he's healthy, and Tippett, another one in Tippett. Right? We have youth, and we have Forrester. You know, we have the youth in that department. We have the numbers. We're really missing that
center to pass to them. Essentially,
I mean, it's kind of. Frost is kind of turning into that guy, but I think we're all hesitant to call him that guy. But
until we see it happen more consistently.
You don't know, dude. I mean, honestly, we don't know. Like Frost could hit another level, and he could be a point per game player next year. And all of a sudden, everybody's like, "Well, we didn't expect." It could still happen. He's not that old. He's done it in juniors level.
I mean, not to compare Frost to Claude Giroux or anything, but I mean, the first season that Giroux came in the league and really got a chance and was playing with JVR and Asham, he put up about 45 points that season.
Yeah. And then was he 22?
Yeah, and
21,
it was
21.
I think so, something like that. And
I think he was 21.
He was pretty young. And Frost, I mean, he's a little bit older than that, but also I think the injuries and the COVID stuff kind of puts Frost in basically the same situation Giroux is. It's basically his first shot, really, with like consistent NHL line mates. So I think it's up in the air
now.
I think it's up in the air, man. It's just they got to be patient and really see what he can become. And just to jump off, I guess, for our last topic, Yariv, did you want to go into kind of some prospect talk?
Yeah, I was about to transition into that. I was just when you finish. Here's the thing. We have a few prospects we can talk about. I guess I saw you listed Tuamala on here. I wanted to start with him.
Yeah.
I did. I looked up Tuamala's stats. I have not watched him play at all. I did see he is playing in the lower league right now in the Finnish league, but he is tearing that league up. I think he has a 1.79 point per game pace.
You are right. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. He's a weird one. I don't know what to do with him. I would say it seems to me like the Flyers should bring him over to the Phantoms next year. Try to figure
I
out
think
what's going on with this game. What do you think?
I think next year for Tuamala, that's a smart move. And reason being, I mean, you have him in house. You can kind of foster his development more, obviously, in the way that you might want as a team. But also, I think it'll be conducive for him to probably get used to the North American game because it seems like he's a player that might have trouble adjusting to higher levels just based on
Yeah.
the fact that he tried to play in the higher finish level, did not work out. Now he's back in the lower level, which is not a bad thing, as we're saying. It's all a linear situation or it's not a linear situation. I mean, for the development. So I think there's still a lot of talent there, and he has the raw skills. It's just kind of about putting it together for him. The skating is certainly there, man. The guy can fly. If you've seen some clips of him and things
Yeah,
like
it's
that,
why it's so shocking that his
shout
game.
out to Jamie. Obviously, he tweeted this out. So this stat is from him. Flyers prospect Samu Tuamala has appeared to have refound his game again. He has 16 goals, 9 assists in 14 games for Katera Mestis. I probably butchered that. But it's a second tier finish, like what you're saying. But I mean, he's regaining his confidence, so that's a positive
I
thing.
look
That's kind of why I wanted to bring it up because I mean, even though it's a lower league, it's a good thing that he's posting over a point a game, and it speaks to the fact that he might get recalled up potentially and go up back to the tier one finish team at some point this season. And if so, I'm interested to see how he performs there.
he's obviously too good for that league, like talent wise. Maybe
That's what I
something
mean.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe something happened to him. I don't know exactly. I don't know his story that well. We'll find out more about him, but hopefully it doesn't turn into a lost cause because that was a pretty high pick for the Flyers. So I'd like to
Yeah.
see him at least be good at the AHL level.
Yeah.
Um,
And a
so
lot
we'll
of
see
people liked the
what
pick
happens.
too when they
At the
made it. A lot of
time,
people
that's
like
why
it.
it wasn't like an egregious overreach or anything like that. But
Some people had him like late first round, so
and right now he's producing like a 5th to 7th round pick. So
which is not great, but
yes, I was looking in that league. There is one other NHL prospect from what I saw, and he's a 7th round pick. So,
yeah.
just to put it in perspective, you guys. But we'll see what happens with Tuamala. Let's talk about the three Phantoms we have listed here. With Brink, Forrester, and Lishkel. Let's just start with Lishkel. He's still a point per game pace. I can't believe he wasn't an
Yeah,
all-star.
26 points in 26 games,
I
man.
don't understand how he's not an all-star nominee.
Hmm.
That confuses me.
Especially since he's a rookie in that league.
Yeah, he's a rookie and he's a point per game. He's doing phenomenally in the AHL, which is really great to see. Forrester is heating up. He's turning into a goal scoring machine again. He kind of had a slow goal scoring start, scoring at a much faster rate. I think he has 13 goals, 13 assists on the season right now.
Yeah,
He's not,
26 points,
yeah,
he's 37 games, yeah.
not good enough for an NHL call up yet, but he's building towards something. And then Bobby Brink, I think he has 4 goals in 7 games. He actually has the highest point or goals per game on the team right now, quietly. And let's see what happens when he's actually healthy and back on his game because I think Brink's probably too good for the AHL at this
That's what it
point.
seems like. I mean, he's almost not scoring
And
on
comment
a
on the others
on
too if you want. I'm sorry,
yeah,
Vasili.
yeah, he's not scoring on a game by game basis as he was earlier, but he's still got 4 goals in 7 games, which is very impressive. And he has 4 goals on 6 shots. So it just shows like the shooting prowess is there. It's kind of crazy. I don't think he was ever a guy that was really touted to have, the greatest shot either. So I think that's something that's pretty
No,
underrated.
there were mixed reviews. I'll say I
That's
do
what I mean,
remember
right?
there were some people who were saying he. I mean, Jamie. If you ask Jamie, he always called him a goal scorer. But
Yeah.
I think when we drafted him, he was primarily seen as a playmaker. But I think he always kind of had a big shot to some degree.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was people knew that he could score in tight, but they weren't sure if he could score kind of outside the dots where like you see a guy like Tippett can just fire it. And
Sure.
off the goals I'm seeing him score, it seems like this guy can score from anywhere. So like that's what I mean. Like he has a really nice shot. So I think that's a great asset for the Flyers because you can never have too many guys that have plus shots. So to add him to this lineup next year, I think would be a great thing. And I think, like you're saying, Yariv, he's a bit potentially too good for the AHL level right now. He's kind of regaining his footing. I wonder if we see. I know it's tough because he hasn't gone to the Tour training camp. But if he keeps lighting it up like this, I wonder if there's an injury if we see him get a shot.
I could see it happening. It depends on the person who's injured.
Mhm.
I think it would be later though, and I think what would I because I was thinking about this earlier today. I think it would have to for the Flyers. They'd have to see that the Phantoms are not really in it. I think to
Yeah, fair
some
enough. I
degree
agree. Yeah,
because I think there's a lot invested in getting the Phantoms to the playoffs. It's a
yeah.
really big deal. That team
Which
has not been competitive enough.
no, it makes sense. I think
And they need
too.
it. They need the
I think
experience.
too. You know what? A long playoff run would do him well, and would do a lot of those young players. I always
Even a
compare it.
playoff round
Yeah,
in the pros.
I always compare it to Richards and Carter when they went on that huge
Yeah.
run for the
With
Calder Cup. Like,
Umberger, Randy
yeah,
Jones. There's a
yeah,
lot of
exactly.
players on
What
there.
did that do? What did that do for all those players when they came up to the NHL level? Right, it prepared them with certain experiences. So I think
And
it's a
confidence. We were talking about that
yeah,
earlier.
yeah, it's a great thing for the young guys. So like for the Phantoms, I mean, it's probably the best if they go on a long run for all those guys. And then another younger guy I wanted to mention as well, actually was Elliot Desnoyers because he's doing really well with the Phantoms. I mean, in 38 games in his rookie year as a pro, he has 22 points in 38 games. So I think, a little bit forgotten since there's so much just young guys that are doing well down there. But he's another one of them where the future looks bright just in terms of the
He's the center.
prospects. Yeah, he's a center exactly, which is a good thing. And I think people saw him short that he might have potential to be more of a scorer than we believe. To be honest,
Yeah. I mean, could use
he's
another
doing it.
Lawn type. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
and that's what he's looking to be. And I think last guy I wanted to touch on Yariv just for the prospect talk would be obviously Cutter Gauthier.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I saw one of his goals he had on the power play the other night. And man, he has a release. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh
Like
yeah. His shot
this
is sick.
his shot is insane. Like he gets the puck and it's off his stick in a second in the back of the net, and you just look at it and you're like, man, like the Flyers had do they were a team a couple of years ago where you looked, you know what, they don't have the shooting mentality. They don't have a lot of guys that can shoot the puck, but it's looking like with a lot of the guys they've drafted, I think it's kind of been maybe a strategy of the team to kind of draft these shoot first type guys.
Yeah.
I think Brent Flair kind of mentioned that when I was at the draft that it's been their kind of focus to look for these type of guys since the team has lacked it, and then
Yeah.
we're going to start kind of see them come up all together, and it's going to be very interesting to watch how they kind of mesh with each other. But Gauthier, man, he's been ripping it up. He actually got 5 in a game yesterday night. He had a boarding penalty, so he's already kind of showing his Broad Street bully colors there, right? Getting kicked out of the game.
Kicked out of the game.
Yeah,
Welcome home, buddy. Thank
yeah,
you.
you belong here. But I
Right.
mean, Gauthier has just been killing it for the Flyers, or not for the Flyers, for in college right now. And I'm just excited to see him. Do you think we're going to see him, come at the end of college? What's your thoughts there?
The end of college, or you mean next year?
Yeah, no, I mean like at the end of this college season.
Yeah, I do.
You think he's going to sign? Yeah, I agree.
I
I agree as
think
well.
I think he wants to.
Well, yeah, just based on what he said to us at the draft, I think that's the case. I think he believes that next year he can be an NHL player.
Yeah,
For sure.
I think. Look, I think a lot of times with a player of that caliber, that type of name, top 5 pick,
Yeah,
a lot of it's on the player. Like
yeah, for
the
sure.
team,
Whether they feel comfortable, right?
as soon as they can bring you into the AHL at the very least, they feel
Yeah,
comfortable having you because they can develop
yeah,
you in the AHL. Worst comes to worst, they drop you to Reading, right?
yeah,
But if they can only keep you in the NHL or have to send you to a whole different organization, I think that's a lot less tantalizing. So I think for the team, they're open to it already. And if the player's open to it, a la Farabee, right?
yeah.
He'll come over early. A
I
lot of
think,
players go, I want that extra year.
yeah,
Whatever. I
we'll
want to
see.
keep
I
partying.
think,
I got a girlfriend. I want to win with this
yeah,
team, whatever it
exactly.
is, right?
Yeah,
My
I mean,
family
there's a
needs
lot of
me.
things
Who
with the
knows?
college experience that makes it enticing to
I
come
want my
back for sure.
degree, or exactly, or I want
Yeah,
4 years so I can come back later and finish that degree,
yeah.
or I can finish it in like the summers or whatever. Because
And
I guarantee
that's
you
something you
guys
got to
do that.
respect, right? Because I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that if you're a player. I mean, look at Owen Power, who went back for a second year, and look how good he's doing in Buffalo right now. So it doesn't
Yeah,
mean anything in terms of what the player's going to top out at. I think you're right, though. You're like we'll probably see Gauthier, and I think it's probably the best thing maybe for his development. And people aren't really mentioning this. Obviously it's going to develop in the lower leagues, but I think for him, he's carrying it up already, man. Like he has 12 goals,
Well,
8 assists,
that's kind of my
20
point.
points in 16 games. Like, what else is there for him to learn
What is
at
he
that
gonna do?
level?
Like, think about it. Okay, he's already the
4 points over per game, right?
right.
So,
He's already like not the best you can be in college hockey or anything like that. That would if he
but he's
stayed
the
next
top player on
year.
his team already.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If he stayed next year, he'd be like the best player in college hockey. And while that's
Yeah.
not awful, it's not a terrible thing. It actually maybe is even the right thing in circumstances. Where in the AHL, you're not going to be the best player well,
No.
potentially, maybe Gauthier would. But
What
you'll
is
be
there left to
one of the
learn for
best
him,
players.
right?
Yeah, you'll be one of the
Exactly.
best players in that league. You're not going to be like hands down dominating people all the time. You're going to be physically challenged more than you would. So these are kind of the reasons why I think hockey wise, it would make sense to get him in the AHL first. And then let him play in the AHL potentially even for a little bit and then bring him to the NHL. But it'll kind of be up to him, dude. It really depends because I do see a lot of the Jeff Carter comparisons. That makes sense to me. He's big, he's wiry, he's got a
Yeah.
big shot.
Quick.
But we don't know exactly what this guy's going to be. And if they want to convert him to center, they might want to bring him over to the
That's
AHL. And be
why.
like,
That's what I
we're
was
going to
gonna
put him at
say.
center.
I think
Go ahead.
people are undervaluing like how useful it might be just for him to come for a stint, whether he plays 20 games
Play
in
him
the
first
NHL,
line center on the Phantoms
20 games in the AHL, wherever he goes, AHL, NHL. I think they'll
with
probably give
with
him a mix.
Forrester or Brink.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Forrester probably on his wing.
first off, I mean, you develop some chemistry with those guys already going into next season potentially, but the main thing is just okay, he's going to go to that level. He's going to learn what works for me at the AHL level, what can work for me at the NHL level. And then now I have that mindset and that knowledge, and I can train this summer with that in mind
Yeah.
to get me ready for
Here,
next season, right?
here's the
So,
question. Do you think that he would not make the Flyers if he came in, they signed him, he's got
next
his
season?
yeah, would he make the Flyers
Ah,
next season?
yeah, I think I'll make the Flyers. I would say so.
It
That's my
depends.
thoughts. It might be
What
the
about if
only thing.
Couturier and Atkinson are healthy? This team
It's going to
plus
be tough.
Couturier and Atkinson. Well, I guess
It's going
minus
to be
JVR.
it's going to be tougher. I just think his shot and his plus power skating, just for his size, is too enticing not to put on the team. I think Tortorella will recognize that. I just wonder what's going to happen with the defensive side because that's always what you got to look at with Torch, right? Like he's really good offensively, Gauthier. I mean, he's
Here's the
not bad
problem though.
defense.
When you have
He's
to
not
start
bad
him in the
defense.
wing,
Yeah, I mean, you got to start him off at wing, and I mean, you want to make him into a center. There's a lot of variables. It's
yeah, that's the
tough.
problem.
It's tough.
But
There's a lot of
I
variables, but I
I
think
do
I
agree
think
with you. He would
I
make
think
the
it
team.
benefits him. I think it benefits him to come early and kind of learn a bit of the NHL style game and what he needs to do in the offseason to become a better player. I think it benefit him for
Yeah.
sure.
It's definitely up in the air. Like I would not be surprised if he stays one more year at
Yeah, I mean,
college.
other, and I don't think that's a
And then
bad
at
thing
that
either.
point, yeah, no, I don't. I think at that point, it actually kind of makes the decision easier for us because at that
Yeah,
point, you're like, he's definitely playing in the NHL that following
the
year.
next year, oh,
Yeah.
100%.
So
Yeah.
then you already essentially in your mind are penciling him in, but that's a problem too.
But
One of
like
the
we've seen too in fans' mindsets, right? Like, there's not a bad thing. That's even if he came and signed and started 20 games with the Phantoms and then comes up. Look at Claude Giroux, that happened to him. Look at Cam York this year. He came up and looks better than ever. I don't think that's
yeah.
necessarily a bad thing for him either.
But let's hope he joins the Phantoms and the Phantoms go into the playoffs, adding Cutter Gauthier.
Oh man,
Imagine how fun that would be to watch.
yeah, that'd be awesome. I hope
Bobby
so.
Brink to
I'd
Cutter
love to
Gauthier.
see. I'd love to see a great Phantoms playoff run. And I mean, who knows? It's not what the fans probably want to hear that are pro tank, but the Flyers are only 5 points back from a playoff spot right now. So who really knows what's going to happen?
Yeah,
Something to mention.
been a wild ride. All right,
Definitely.
let's cut it here again. Shout out to our sponsor, Gym Steaks. They're still not open yet. We will announce when they open, but they're in the rebuilding process. But shout out to Gym Steaks on 4th and South Street. Go get yourself, or 3rd and South Street. Go get yourself a cheesesteak. The other thing is, Vasili, you got anything you want to share with the audience?
Should have, some articles coming out this week just surrounding, state of the team, things like that, just where we're going in terms of the recent games played and like what I think on that, just the play of the team. So keep an eye out on Flyers Nitty Gritty and keep, checking us out because we're going to keep having content for you guys to read, listen to, all that stuff. And we're planning as well, some changes just to the podcast to try to make it more accessible for all you guys. So excited about that and, getting your guys' feedback on all that stuff.
Yeah, we're getting started on some stuff. Hopefully we'll have stuff to announce relatively soon, but we're just working on things. We want to improve the shows and stuff, so there'll be more opportunities coming to do that. Thanks, buddy. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. Super appreciative. Please like, subscribe, share. I say it all the time, but go rate us on the apps, whatever it is. It helps a lot. Just driving traffic or attention to us is just a big help, and we're not going to stop doing this. And again, shout out to everybody at Flyers Nitty Gritty that's working their butts off. I know it was a stressful couple weeks for people there with the media and all that stuff. Good luck to you. If you guys are yelling at people online, I would recommend to stop. And if you're doing it on television, I would recommend to stop as well. Yeah. So again, to all of our audience, again, you guys are awesome. I'm starting to follow a little bit more of you guys online, and everybody's just so thoughtful and
welcoming, and just everybody's just nice people, man. And I think we need more of that, right? Instead of yelling at people and shouting your opinions, maybe we should try to be more welcoming of everybody and just nice to each other.
Keep it to the ice,
exactly.
The nice stuff should be outside
of the ice.
Yeah. All right, well said, Vasili. All right, again, thank you everybody for listening. We love you very much, and remember, always stay gritty.